Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for joining us. Well, you and your financial credit, but first, my special guest, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, joins me, and we get to that after these words.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, for this session of the General Assembly and obviously the House of Representatives, Joanna McClinton is the new Speaker of the House. She's a Democrat from the 191st District. That's in the city of brotherly love, otherwise known as the city of Philadelphia. Correct, Madam Speaker?
That's correct.
All right. One of the things that I think are pretty important has to do with representation in Pennsylvania and the fact that the nature of it is really undergoing change.
That's correct. We see in the last election, November of 2022, one of the most representative elections we've ever had. We have a lot of different firsts. We have them on both sides of the aisle. I happen to be one of the first, but we have the first woman in Berks County, Dominican-American woman, Representative Cepeda. That's a first. We have so many others throughout the entire state, and a lot of that has come through having a fair and representative map from the last redistricting portion.
Yeah. And, you know, in some ways, as someone who spent most of his adult career, working with college-age students, this doesn't surprise me that we're in one of those periods of change that takes place in our society, and we end up with, a situation in which I call it coming of age. And literally for younger people, it is a coming of age, but certainly a big change, not just in the legislature, but throughout our society as a whole.
That's right. We've seen a lot of change in the last year. We have a brand new governor. That's very exciting, a new administration, Governor Shapiro. And we made history with Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis's election.
Right.
He's the first African-American out in Western Pennsylvania. We've got the first African-American woman who's gone to Congress from Pennsylvania, Congresswoman Summer Lee. And our Pennsylvania Supreme Court, we have Chief Justice Deborah Todd, the first woman Chief Justice. So it's an exciting 2023 so far.
Yeah, good point. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Democratic leadership. One of the things that struck me as really fascinating is there seems to be a tenor change. So Governor Shapiro delivers his budget, 90-minute speech. I won't get into all of it, $44 billion. But even and we have had on folks to talk about Democrats and Republicans, but here's what's sort of amazing. If people disagreed, it wasn't mean-spirited. It wasn't harsh. It was, we have some differences. Let's sit down and talk. Is that what you're finding in the state legislature? So
far, yes. And one of the goals I have with my speakership is to bring full collegiality to the floor of the House. It's very important that even with our differences, our distinctions, and what we believe, that we are able to do so in a respectful manner that is preserving how we might personally feel, but making sure that we advocate in a way that makes sense, not in a way that's isolating and ostracizing. And unfortunately, the last few years, we've seen so much become volatile in politics.
Yeah, we had Senator Scott Martin, of course, who's the Republican chair of the Appropriation Committee in the Senate, and he was, he had some concerns, but it seemed to move away from the typical reactions that we've gotten in past years, and it's good to see at any rate. All right, well, let's talk about the Democratic leadership. You have a new leadership team. How do you describe them?
So we have the opportunity for the first time in a long time to take the lead. I call it, we have the keys to the car and the driver's license. Democrats have been in the minority in the state house 24 of the last 27 years. We have a leadership team that includes members from Erie, from Allegheny County, from Bucks County, from my hometown, Philadelphia, and I also serve my neighbors in Delaware County, and from Montgomery County and the Lehigh. We have a diverse,
you got the geography covered.
Very diverse group, and folks are passionate about the issues. We plan to work very hard on behalf of Pennsylvania's families everywhere in the state.
Yeah. Let's run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the policy agenda. Let's get into the issues. And we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, Madam Speaker, let's talk about the priorities of your House administration. There's a whole series of them. So what do you want to start with?
We've got to start with our children, our schools, our future, the ones who we will hope take care of us one day, not too long from here. We've got to invest in public education. The Commonwealth Court made a decision not long ago saying that unfortunately, the state legislature has been underfunding certain school districts. And in PA, we don't want the zip codes to determine what kind of school your children can attend. We want there to be great public schools in every community.
Yeah, that's poorer districts because of the property taxes aren't like other districts in the state. They receive less funding for their schools. And Governor Shapiro mentioned that obviously in his budget message, but he left it. He said that's something we've got to resolve. So what are you saying, that the House and the Senate and the governor's office have to get together on a plan? Is that basically what you think is going to happen?
That's correct. Over the next few months, as we get to the June 30th budget deadline, we have to figure out a way to get us out of the deficit. I also serve Delaware County, and William Penn School District was the lead plaintiff in the school funding lawsuit, and they have been underfunded for years. And what we've seen is some school districts now have less students, while others have more students, and we have to make sure that we're sending them the money that they need so they can educate our children.
Yeah, and that's obviously a significant issue. And well, before we get away from schools, I have to ask you about the 14 publicly owned universities. The governor, I think one of the surprises was only a 2% increase in their budget. Now, you know, we got inflation, what, 4.5%, and that was not well received in the higher ed community with the public universities. What's the debate like in the House about that?
So once we get our children K through 12 with fairly funded schools where they can learn and they can get all the support they need to launch into success, it's important that those children are able to choose affordable colleges in Pennsylvania. Yeah. It's wonderful to move around, but it's even better if they stay here so that they can one day work here and have their families here. And certainly our state system is ideal. It's in every part of Pennsylvania in different corners from the west all the way to the east. And these universities have to be supported so that the tuition is affordable and so that the staff is retained.
Okay, well, you seem optimistic about it at any rate. All right, let's talk about what you call free and fair elections. Obviously, changes to, you know, mail-in voting is the biggest change probably that we've seen in recent years in the state. What's the agenda for free and fair elections? So
House Democrats want to defend democracy. We want to continue to protect every single voter in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, Pennsylvanians fell under the spell of the big lie. We saw so many different fallouts from 2020 all the way to January 6th, the deadly insurrection, and we want to make sure that Pennsylvania voters can trust the system. So one of the key things to do is to allow our counties to pre-canvass. That just organizes and sorts the ballots so they can be counted quicker, so we can know the outcomes of elections quicker.
You have to show voter ID the first time that you vote. Some say you ought to show it every time you vote. where does that stand?
So that is something that is possibly coming up to the legislature this session. There's been a lot of talk about making sure there's more identification. And the key is, if we require it for every time you vote, we want to make sure our seniors who can't always get to PennDOT and other populations can get the identification current so that they can still participate in elections. We want to make it easier, not harder for people to vote.
Another topic, help for working families.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things Pennsylvania has not been able to keep up with, and all the states around us have, is raising the minimum wage. Whether we look at Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, New York, they all have a higher minimum wage. Ours has been stuck at $7.25. And whether we're talking about childcare or other rising costs, it's important for us to keep up and keep workers compensated appropriately.
Final topic, preventing gun violence. Obviously, every day, the news, somebody gets shot, somebody killed, maimed.
Public safety is a priority for our caucus. We have a few things that we should be doing. One of them is making sure we invest in our law enforcement so that they are equipped with all the essentials to resolve the cases. In Philadelphia, my hometown, we have an unfortunate backlog of so many homicides that have not been resolved. And certainly the folks who've been doing these bad things potentially are walking around doing it again and again, never being held accountable. That's unacceptable. The second thing is making sure we invest in programs to teach young people especially how to de-escalate disagreements, how to resolve issues peacefully, and making sure that violence is never an option.
All right, thanks for coming in. You're always welcome. All right, coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about your financial credit reports, how important that is to all of us, back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by CrossState Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
All right, let's talk about personal finances, otherwise known as our money. Joining me to do that is Nicola Foggie. She's the Chief Regulatory Officer with CrossState Credit Union Association, and Matthew White, President and CEO of Blue Chip FCU. I think I got that all right. All right, we're going to talk about why is this important? Why is things like credit report, credit scores, why do they matter?
Well, a credit score is important because it affects whether you can even obtain credit. It impacts the cost of credit. The lower the score, the higher the rate you would pay on a loan. It could be used in evaluating a job application, a request to rent an apartment, or whether an insurance policy is granted and at what price. Having a low credit score can easily cost you tens of thousands of dollars on large credit requests, such as like a mortgage.
So in other words, it's absolutely essential to do any business in our country today, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, Nicola, let's start with you. Well, first of all, what is a credit report? Let's get to the basics.
Exactly. So a credit report is a compilation of consumers' behavior and habits, and it's also a predictor of how you repay your debt, your credit. And so from the time you are of age to obtain a credit score, it's a really important matter to keep that credit score that's resulting from your credit report in good shape.
And there are 3 national credit reporting bureaus, according you folks have sent this in.
So there's Equifax, there's Experian, and TransUnion, and they're the 3 major credit reporting agencies that financial institutions and other financial entities report your behavior to those entities.
And this would be people like employers and landlord. Go ahead.
Exactly. So it's employers. So your credit score is used for many things. So if you're applying for a job, your future or potential employer may pull a credit report on you. If you're then seeking an apartment, they may pull a credit report on you to see how you pay your bills and how you may have paid your previous apartment complex as well.
All right, you're next. What is a credit score? I'm learning a lot here. What is a credit score?
A credit score is basically a 3-digit numerical descriptor of your relative creditworthiness based on your payment history, outstanding debts, credit history inquiries, new accounts open, type of credit, the age of trade lines, and the utilization ratio of revolving debt. A credit score is essentially a reflection of past payment history and credit usage in order to help predict future consumer behavior in regards to their credit. Scores typically range between 300 to 850, depending on the credit bureau. Each credit bureau has a little bit different model, and then the type of credit report being pulled. Anything over 700 would be considered a prime borrower. Below 600, it might be a little more difficult and costly to obtain credit. In theory, the higher the credit score, the more likely the borrower is to repay.
Well, that leads to an important question, which we'll get to after the break, and that is, how can I improve the credit, or how can all of us improve our credit score?
So there's no silver bullet, and certainly just like you build credit over time, if you do have a lower score, it does take time to improve your score. And so you pay your bills consistently and on time. And most importantly, if you're having trouble paying your bills, you need to call the creditor and have a conversation with them.
See, this was important enough so that we got to it before the break, but let's run to a break, and when we come back, how do I learn what my credit report says and what my credit score is? That's obviously important, and we'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Well, Matt, there's an important question here. What's in my credit report? How do I learn what's in the credit report and what my credit score is?
Great question. Periodically, you would want to check your credit report. It's a great way to check for errors and help detect and deter identity theft. You're entitled, anyone's entitled to one free copy of their credit report annually. You can get that free credit report at annualcreditreport.com.
It's annualcreditreport.com. Go ahead.
Annualcreditreport.com would be a website where you can get your one free copy of your credit report. You can look at it, look for any discrepancies, whatnot.
Well, here we go. We all are online, and we all have had problems online with a whole variety of institutions and activities. So how do you check online, and be careful doing the checking?
Well, Terry, that's a great question, because whether it's your credit reports or your other financial transactions, you need to be very careful when you're online checking these items. You need to, number one, make sure that you are, in fact, on the website you plan to be on. It's typically much safer to actually type the name of the company and the website in yourself to get to it. Be wary of any emails with links in it purporting to be your creditor or your financial institution.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you get stuff all the time, and I just delete them immediately. I don't, if I don't have an account with somebody, even if I have an account, I'm likely to call the individuals where the account is located that I know to make sure it's theirs, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be careful checking your credit report online. You want to be careful transacting any business online before giving out your credit card, checking your checking account information, social security number, et cetera. You want to be sure you're dealing with that company. You want to be obviously wary of any emails you would receive. If you would spot an error on your credit report, the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act offers a dispute process that you have the right to dispute erroneous information in writing. The credit bureau must confirm this information is accurate or remove it, and then the creditor would be obligated to confirm the information that they feel is inaccurate or accurate. And then if you feel it's still inaccurate, you're entitled to put a statement on your credit report. So,
Nicola, in a word, complicated.
Oh, it is complicated. It can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. With today's regulation of the credit reporting process, the fair credit reporting process, consumers have the right to access their credit and get the exact information that their creditors are seeing. So if they need to rectify something, as Matt said, you have the opportunity to reach out to your creditor or to the Bureau to rectify an error.
Yeah. And, you know, before we go on, given your backgrounds and what you do in your workday, are people involved in this to a great deal? Do they understand what you're talking about here?
For the most part, yes. There's some that need a little help and guidance for sure. There's companies out there that are claiming to help you fix your credit. You got to be very careful of that. Some of those companies prey on people at their lowest point, and you got to be aware of scams and whatnot. But there are legitimate credit counseling services out there. Contacting a credit union or an association that can kind of put you in the right direction there. The last thing you want to do, when you're facing a financial difficulty, is to pay someone to help you, get out of that situation.
Do your member organizations and other financial institutions like banks, do they assist you in this?
Yeah, most would.
Do they have people who directly provide assistance?
Yes, Terry. Financial institutions, typically, whether bank or credit union, have financial counselors, financial folks that are educated in the ways of how you can navigate checking your credit report and staying up on top of your credit score. And there are many members of credit unions that are pretty savvy about what that score will provide them in better rates and access to credit. If
your credit score is less than 700, you're going to pay more?
Less than 700.
Actually, yes.
Actually, credit scores range from 300 to 850, so they go pretty low. So less than 600, you're definitely going to pay more. If your credit score is higher than 650, 700, it's considered a good score. And you're going to get lower rates. And
you can shop around and...
Yeah, it definitely depends on the lender. Credit unions typically, will often provide, loans to people with less than perfect credit at far lower rates than banks and other lenders would do.
Yeah. And free counseling is available. I mean, I think this is a very important point. Free counseling is available.
Both the credit unions, we certainly are dedicated to our mission of helping our members, and so we provide free counseling and guidance throughout your credit borrowing life, as well as there's copious information online at the 3 credit bureaus we mentioned.
Well, look, I want to thank you. I think this is very, very important, and I'm delighted that you could be on and talk about this, because this is something that I think everybody needs to be sufficiently aware of. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.